The moment Remy stopped watching the fireworks and turned to look at me instead, and said, quietly, "I've seen the sky before. You're more interesting." I forgot every sensible thing I'd told myself for 6 weeks. Don't make it weird. She's your morning coffee, not your anything else. You moved here to slow down, not to complicate things. She's probably just friendly. Some people are built that way. But there she was, sitting on the flat rock above Kinnard Point with her knees pulled to her chest, the whole northern sky cracking open in red and white and gold behind her, looking at me like she'd already made a decision I hadn't been asked to weigh in on. My name is Luca Ferraro. I was 29 that summer, newly arrived in Harrow Bay, a town of maybe 4,000 people on the eastern shore of Lake Huron, the kind of place where the main street still had a hardware store and a diner with laminated menus and a parking lot that doubled as the farmer's market on Saturday mornings. I'd taken a contract with a regional construction firm out of Goderich, overseeing drainage work on a new subdivision. The work was steady. The town was quiet. That was the whole idea. I'd spent 3 years in Toronto running hard at something I couldn't name. Overtime, noise, a relationship that ended poorly and left me standing in my own apartment on a Wednesday night, wondering how I'd ended up so tired of a life I'd built on purpose. The move to Harrow Bay wasn't a plan so much as a controlled collapse. Get small, get quiet, figure out what you actually want when nobody's watching. What I hadn't planned on was Remy. Remy Okafor ran a cafe called Anchor on the ground floor of an old chandlery building 2 blocks from the water. Mismatched chairs, chalkboard menus, and a display case that changed every week depending on what she felt like baking. I found it on my second morning in town because I couldn't get the espresso machine in my rental to work, and I wasn't about to drive 40 kilometers for a Tim Hortons. I pushed open the door, and a woman behind the counter looked up from a tray of something that smelled like brown butter and cardamom and said, "Flat white or pour over? You look like a pour over person." "I don't know what I look like," I said. She seemed to find this funnier than it was. "Pour over," she decided. "Give it a week." That was the first thing Remy ever said to me. She was 26, and she'd opened Anchor 2 years before on a small business loan and a specific stubbornness about what she wouldn't compromise on. The coffee quality, the lighting, the fact that there would always be at least one thing in the case that wasn't sweet. She'd grown up in Harrow Bay, left for culinary school in Guelph, done a year in a Montreal restaurant kitchen, then came back because her grandmother was aging and the town needed a decent cafe, and, she told me much later, because she had always been better at building things in small places than surviving in big ones. For 6 weeks, I came in every morning at 7:15. Remy started having my pour-over ready before I reached the counter. We talked while she cleaned the steam wand or restocked cups. She asked about the job. I asked about whatever was in the case. She told me the croissants were fussy and the financiers were easy and the rye sourdough was the only thing she'd ever baked that made her feel genuinely smug. I told her about the drainage project, which was considerably less interesting, but she listened like it wasn't. I liked the way she moved through the space. Never rushed, but never still. I liked that she remembered which regulars took oat milk without being reminded, and that she wrote small facts on the weekly specials board that had nothing to do with the specials. Fun fact: the lake outside was once a freshwater sea. It still acts like it sometimes. I liked that she had a small scar on her left thumb from a mandolin incident she described with genuine bewilderment, as if the mandolin had acted entirely of its own volition. I liked her considerably more than I admitted, which meant I came in every morning, had my coffee, talked to her for exactly as long as felt reasonable, and left before I could become a problem. Then on a Thursday in late June, she slid a ticket across the counter with my cup. "Canada Day fireworks," she said. "My friend was supposed to come, but she's in the middle of a thing. I've got the good spot already staked out. Flat rock above Kinnard Point. You can see the whole bay. You'd need to drive, though. My car's making a noise I don't trust on hills." I looked at the ticket. I looked at her. "The good spot," I said. "Fills up fast, local knowledge. And your car." "Unreliable, yes." She didn't break eye contact, "If you'd rather not." "No," I said. "I'll drive." She nodded once, like this had been the expected answer all along. 7:30. "I'll bring the thermos." I should have known right there. Canada Day fell on a Tuesday that year. The whole town had been buzzing since the weekend, bunting on the storefronts, the community center selling Ribfest tickets, kids already treating the sidewalks like a province-wide obstacle course. I'd been to bigger Canada Day events in the city, the kind with corporate sponsors and 30,000 people sitting on damp grass. This was nothing like that. Harrow Bay did it the way small Lake Huron towns do. Local, a little chaotic, and completely sincere. Remy was waiting on her front step at 7:29, holding a thermos, wearing a soft red sweater over a white dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She had that same quality I'd noticed in the cafe. A settled presence, like she'd already done the math on the evening and come out comfortable with the answer. "You're almost on time," she said. "I'm a minute early." I noticed. She opened the passenger door before I could reach it, which somehow made me more nervous, not less. The drive to Kinnard Point took about 15 minutes, up through the edge of town and into the low hills that ran along the shore. Remy connected her phone to my AUX cable without asking and found a station playing Old Tragically Hip, then sang along quietly under her breath. Not performing, just existing comfortably in the space beside me. The evening light turned everything amber and slow. I wanted to say something that wasn't about the road or the fireworks schedule. I didn't. We parked in the gravel lot at the top of the ridge and hiked a short trail to the flat rock. The rock was exactly as she'd described, wide and flat, jutting out over the hillside with a clean view of the whole bay below. A few families and couples had already settled in with lawn chairs and coolers. We found the far edge, spread out the blanket she'd rolled under her arm, and sat down with the thermos between us. "Good spot," I said. "I told you." "How long have you been coming up here?" She thought about it. "Since I was about 12. My dad brought me the year the town got its first proper fireworks contract. Before that, it was just the volunteer fire department setting off whatever was left over from the fall fair." I tried to picture her at 12 on this rock. "Did you always know you'd come back here after Guelph?" "No." She poured coffee into the thermos cap and handed it to me. "I thought I'd stay in Montreal. Then I'd go to Vancouver. Then I came home for a month when my grandmother had her hip done, and I started helping out at the diner on weekends, and I thought, I'm better at this here than I am anywhere else." She paused. "That either means I belong here or I lack ambition. I haven't decided which. I don't think those are the only options." She glanced at me. "Ask me something else." "What?" That's a question for someone who's had 2 drinks and is feeling philosophical. Her mouth curved slightly. "Ask me something regular." I laughed before I meant to. She smiled into her cup. The sky darkened the way it does in July on the lake, slow and reluctant, like the sun was being rude about leaving. Around 9:30, the first shells went up from the barge anchored below, and the crowd on the rock breathed in together the way people always do at the first burst. Red and white and gold, sparks unwinding in the water below like a second sky. I watched it for a while. Then I looked at Remy. She wasn't watching the fireworks. She was watching me. Not sneaking a glance. Not looking away when I noticed. She was looking directly, with the calm of someone who had made up her mind a while back and was simply waiting to see if I'd catch up. "I've seen the sky before," she said, when I didn't speak. "You're more interesting." I had been shocked by a live wire once on a job site. That was easier to process than this. "Remy, you don't have to say anything." She glanced back at the bay briefly. "I'm just being honest. I think you've been coming in every morning hoping I'd be honest first, and I got tired of waiting for you to go first." I wasn't. I stopped. That would have been a lie, maybe. "Definitely." She turned back to me. "You do this thing where you're about to say something real and then you dial it back to something manageable. I've watched you do it maybe 40 times. That landed precisely." "I had a relationship in Toronto," I said. "Took me a long time to understand that what I thought was love was mostly proximity and not wanting to be alone. And since then, I've been very careful." "I know," she said it gently, not like she pitied me. "You lead with careful. It's one of the things I like about you, most of the time." "Most of the time?" "Sometimes it makes me want to tip your order into your lap." I laughed, helpless, surprised. She was grinning. Below us, the fireworks were building toward their finale, the synchronized bursts that meant the end was close. The whole bay lit up in 3-second intervals. Kids shrieked somewhere to our left. Someone's phone played a tinny accidental "Oh Canada." Remy's shoulder was against mine. I hadn't noticed the moment that had happened. I didn't move. "I've thought about asking you out," I said. "I know that too. You know everything." Small town cafe, people talk. She looked at me and the lightness faded into something quieter. "Why didn't you?" I exhaled, looked out at the water. "Because you're the part of my morning I look forward to, and I didn't want to be wrong and lose it." She was quiet for a moment. "That's the most honest thing you've said to me in 6 weeks," she said. "I'm working up to it." Her hand was resting on the blanket between us, palm up, fingers slightly open. I don't know if she meant it. I told myself I wasn't sure. Then I put my hand over hers. She looked down, then back up. Her expression didn't change exactly, it deepened. The finale went off. The long volley, burst after burst, the sky above the bay splitting open in light. The crowd cheered. A string of snaps went off somewhere down the hill. The cedar forest around us flickered orange and white. Remy's fingers threaded through mine. Then her phone rang. She didn't move right away. I felt her go still the way you do when you already know who's calling and what it's going to cost. She looked at the screen. I caught the name before she tilted it away. Hannah. And I saw her face. Not frightened, not surprised, braced. "Sorry," she said quietly. "1 minute." She answered. I looked back at the water and tried to hear nothing. I couldn't. Remy's voice was low and measured. "Yes. I hear you. When did this start? Have you called anyone else?" The voice of someone who had done this many times, who had learned how to manage the panic in someone else's voice without adding to it. Hannah's voice on the other end came through as a sustained, rising current of distress, the specific frequency of someone who knew it would be answered. It went on for 4 minutes. When Remy hung up, she held the phone in both hands and looked at the bay. "She okay?" I asked. "She will be." A pause. "Hannah's my oldest friend. We met in grade 4. She goes through these periods where things pile up and she needs somewhere to put them. And I've always been the place." I waited. "She wants me to come tonight." Remy's voice was careful. "Bad few months. Her job, her apartment, a guy, all at once. She's 20 minutes away." "That's a lot at once," I said. "It is." She looked at the phone again, then at me. "If I asked you to drive me?" "I would." She nodded slowly then, "But I'm not going to ask." I looked at her. "I love Hannah," she said, "but I have been the place she puts things for 22 years. And tonight," she stopped, took a breath. "Tonight I'm sitting on a flat rock above the bay with someone who just told me I'm the part of his morning he looks forward to, and I don't want to leave. Remy. She's safe. I know the difference between a crisis and a rough night, and tonight is a rough night." She turned the phone over in her hands. "She'll be angry. She'll say I chose someone over her, which is something she said before when I set a boundary she didn't like. And she'll be okay by Sunday." I didn't say anything. "Tell me if I'm making a mistake," she said. "I don't know, Hannah," I said. "I can't be the one to tell you that." "I know." She looked at the screen. "But I know her, and I know me. And I've canceled things for Hannah for years, because it always felt easier than the conversation that came after." Her jaw tightened slightly. "I'm tired of easier." She powered the phone off. The screen went dark. She set it on the blanket beside her, exhaled once, and looked at me. "She can wait," she said, quietly, like a door closing on a room she'd spent a long time in. Not with cruelty, with decision. I looked at her for a long moment. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I think so," she exhaled slowly. "I've been practicing that for 3 years. Harder in real time than in my head. You were good at it." She let out a small, unsteady laugh. "Don't compliment me yet. I'll feel guilty about it until at least Thursday." I turned toward her. She was still watching the bay, her profile quiet in the dark, the last smoke from the finale drifting slow over the water. "I don't want to be the reason you did something you'll regret," I said. She looked at me then. "You're not the reason," she said. "You're the occasion." A pause. There's a difference. I should have said no to Hannah 100 times before tonight. You just made tonight feel worth starting. That went through me in a way I hadn't expected. She leaned forward and kissed me. It wasn't tentative. She'd decided before she moved. I could feel it in the certainty of it, the absence of any wavering. Her hand came up to the side of my face, her fingers cold from the thermos and warm underneath. I went still for half a second, just stunned by the plain, simple fact of it. Then I kissed her back. The rock, the bay, the crowd, the fading smoke, all of it went soft and distant. What stayed was the warmth of her palm against my jaw and the specific, careful way she kissed me, like she had things to say, and this was one of the ways to say them. When we broke apart, her forehead rested against mine. "Well," she said. "Yeah," I said. She laughed quietly. "That took long enough. I was working up to it." "You were not, I was." I conceded this with what I hoped was some dignity. She smiled against my cheek. We sat like that for a while, her shoulder against mine, her hand back in mine, watching the last of the spectator boats make their way across the bay with running lights blinking. The rock was emptying out around us, families packing up, kids being carried, the low murmur of a Tuesday evening wrapping itself home. Remy didn't seem to be in any hurry. "I want to tell you something," I said. "Okay." In Toronto, I was with someone for 2 years who I think stayed because I was stable. Good apartment, reliable, didn't ask for much. When she left, she said she needed someone more exciting, and what she actually meant was she'd already found him. I paused. I spent a long time after that, being very useful to people and calling it connection. Being needed felt close enough to being wanted when you were lonely enough. Remy was quiet, listening. "I don't want to do that anymore," I said. "I'm telling you now because I'd rather you know this before you know too many other things about me." She was quiet for a moment, not uncomfortable, thinking. "Thank you," she said. "Just that. Thank you. Most people lead with the edited version." She squeezed my hand. I like the unedited one better. I exhaled something I'd been carrying for about 2 hours. "You're making this very easy." "I'm really not." She paused. "I'm terrified. I just look calm because I've been running a cafe for 2 years, and you learn to look calm or the whole room feels it." That surprised me enough that I turned to face her properly. She met my gaze. "I've had one relationship in the last 4 years. He was charming and attentive for about 3 months and then slowly became someone who needed me to be uncomplicated in order to be happy." She said it plainly. "And I am not uncomplicated." "No," I agreed. Her mouth twitched. "Don't sound so pleased about it." "I'm not pleased, I'm relieved." She tilted her head slightly. "I've been careful because I was afraid of being useful again," I said. "But you never once made me feel useful. You made me feel interesting. Since about day 3. Her expression changed. Something in it went quieter, more private. "That's the second most honest thing you've said tonight," she said softly. "What's the first?" "That I'm the part of your morning you look forward to." She looked at me steadily. "I've been waiting for someone to mean that in the specific way you said it." I kissed her again. This one started slower and went somewhere else, less careful, her hand in my hair, mine at her waist. When we stopped, she pressed her forehead to my collarbone and stayed there a while. "I'll need to check on Hannah tomorrow," she said, against my chest. "Yeah. She'll be upset. She'll say things." "What will you say?" She thought about it seriously. That I love her, that I'm not her emergency contact anymore, that both of those things can be true at the same time. She paused. "I've said the first part a lot. The second part is new." "Is that the conversation you've been putting off?" "More like 5 years." She sat up. "But we've known each other long enough. She'll understand eventually. She's not a bad person. She's just very good at making her gravity everyone else's problem." We stayed on the rock until the stars were sharp overhead and the parking lot below had mostly cleared. Remy poured the last of the coffee into the cap, and we shared it, passing it back and forth, saying very little. It was comfortable in a way I hadn't expected to feel so soon with anyone. On the drive back into town, she rested her hand palm up on the console between us. I took it at the first stop sign. She smiled but didn't look over, bold. I'm working on it. Don't overdo it. I like the work in progress. I walked her to her door, the side entrance of the chandlery building, above the cafe. She stopped on the step and turned to face me. I'm opening at 7 tomorrow, she said. But if you wanted, there's a place on the harbor that does good whitefish. We could do dinner first. Tomorrow, I said. Yes. She nodded. Then she did the thing I didn't see coming. She took both my hands in hers and held them for a moment, just looking at them. I've been setting your pour-over up early for 6 weeks, she said. Mostly so I'd have a reason to be watching for you to come in the door. The confession, small and precise, undid me more than the kiss had. Remy. Go home, she said, smiling. I have to bake at 5. She kissed me once, brief and deliberate, then went inside. I stood on that step longer than necessary. The next morning, I came in at 7:15. My pour-over was on the counter. Remy had her back to the door, working the espresso machine. 1 minute early, she said, without turning. I know. She turned then and she was smiling, not the cafe smile she gave everyone, the easy professional warmth of someone good at her job. This one was specific. It was for me. Sit, she said. I'll bring the financiers. Hannah called twice that morning. Remy answered the second time. Between the 8 o'clock rush and the quieter stretch before 10, I couldn't hear what was said. What I saw was Remy standing just inside the kitchen doorway, her voice steady and even not apologizing once. She was back behind the counter in 6 minutes. Okay? I asked. She's upset. Remy poured herself a cup. She'll need a few days. But she heard me. That's all you can do. That's a thing I'm still working on believing. She looked at me over the rim. Are you still coming to dinner tonight? I confirmed that 12 hours ago. Just checking. You're still in the work-in-progress phase. I could have argued. I didn't, because she was right, and because the look on her face made being a work-in-progress feel like exactly where I wanted to be. The whitefish at the harbor was good. Remy ordered the chowder too and made me try it, even though I'd said I wasn't a soup person. I was wrong about the soup. She took particular satisfaction in this. We talked about the cafe, about the subdivision project, about whether 4,000 people was a town or a village, about the particular kind of Canadian summer that lasts exactly long enough to make you believe it'll come back. She told me about her grandmother, who'd grown up on this lake and still described weather in terms of what the fish were doing. I told her about my parents, who'd come from Calabria and settled in Hamilton and raised me with the belief that a meal was an occasion and that silence at a table was a personal failure. Hence the pour-over conversations, she said. Every morning. I thought you were lonely. I was, I said, but I was also specifically hoping you'd keep talking. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Public, simple, unhurried. A woman at the next table smiled. I didn't notice in time to be embarrassed about any of it. We walked back along the harbor afterward. At some point, her arm went through mine without either of us marking the moment. The lake was flat and dark beyond the breakwater. Somewhere down the dock, a family was still setting off the tail end of their Canada Day crackers, small pops and bright flecks dissolving in the dark. At her door, she turned. I should say something brave, she said. You've been brave all night. Bravery about soup doesn't count. I put my hand against her cheek. She went still, then leaned into it slightly. The way you do when you didn't know you were waiting to be touched until the exact moment it happens. Thank you for turning your phone off, I said. She looked up at me. Don't make it bigger than it was. It was big, I said. She held my gaze. Then it was 5 years overdue, a pause. But tonight made it easier. I kissed her, right there on the step above the cafe, with the lake smell in the air and the last crackers going off somewhere down the street. When she pulled back, she rested her chin on my shoulder. Your pour-over will be ready at 7, she said into my collar. I'll be there at 7:13. 7:12. I'm adjusting my expectations upward. I laughed, and she felt it. We stood there until it started to feel late, and then a little longer than that. The following Canada Day, I drove Remy back up to Kinnard Point. Same trail, same flat rock, same thermos. She brought financiers wrapped in wax paper. I brought the blanket from the back of my truck. She saw it immediately. You kept it, she said. Of course, I said. She touched the worn edge, then looked at me. Are you going to watch the fireworks this year? She asked. Probably not, I said. Her smile went soft in the specific way I'd come to know, the one that meant being remembered in the particular way I remembered her. The first shell went up over the bay. The crowd breathed in together, red and white and gold, unwinding in the dark water below. Remy looked at the sky for about 10 seconds. Then she looked at me. Still more interesting, she said. I took her hand, and the lake stretched wide and dark and patient below us, and the summer did what Lake Huron summers do, offered itself completely, knowing it couldn't stay, and made you want it more for that. I wasn't afraid of wanting it anymore. That, I think, was the whole thing.